You're watching This Week in Louisiana Politics with Fred Childers.
Good morning, I'm Fred Childers. We hope you're having a great weekend. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. Well, former state senator Karen Carter Peterson was sentenced to 22 months in federal prison this week. She pled guilty to wire fraud charges. The former senator spent more than $100,000 from her campaign and the Louisiana Democratic Party at casinos. Her attorney asked the judge to consider probation or house arrest, arguing that Peterson's gambling addiction affected her mental capacity. That was denied, and she will start her sentence on March 6th. Big news this week in the race for governor. Some big names entered the fray, and some took a step back in their official announcements. Capitol reporter Shannon Hecht brings us the key points.
In a letter to his supporters, Treasurer John Schroeder announced he will be running for governor. He'll be officially kicking off his campaign with an event in February. Schroeder previously was a state representative and has been treasurer since 2017 when John Kennedy took his Senate seat. In his statement, Schroeder says, "We expect a crowded field, and we know we will have to buck the entrenched political establishment to win, but it is a fight worth fighting for the future of Louisiana," end quote. Also in campaign news, Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser has been hinting at a run for months. The night before an official announcement from the campaign, KPEL reported a statement from the campaign saying that Nungesser will be seeking re-election as lieutenant governor. Nungesser and Schroeder were waiting for a decision by Senator Kennedy on if he would run. After Kennedy said he would be remaining in Washington last week, now Schroeder and Attorney General Jeff Landry are the only two official candidates in the race. DOTD Secretary Sean Wilson said in a statement that he is still weighing his options for a run as a Democrat. Decisions from State Senator Sharon Hewitt and State Representative Richard Nelson are still in the works. For your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
And we're not done with this topic. Later in the show, we will be joined by Jeremy Alford of LAPolitics.com to get more in depth on where the race stands now. Nungesser addressed the media the day after news broke he would not be running for governor anymore. Nungesser's official statement said he saw a clear path to victory in the lieutenant governor's race. He also wants to focus on getting tourism back and running strong after the pandemic.
We got a great team around the state, and to disrupt that now at a time when we're really trying to get back to those numbers, my heart, and I prayed about it, and I need to, if the people have me again, stay and finish the job.
Nungesser running for his current office also shakes things up for other candidates. Speaker of the House Clay Sexsnyder had announced he was running for the office previously, but there is talk of him running for Ascension Parish president instead. Also in the race is Lake Charles attorney Hunter Lundy. The 68-year-old is running as an independent and says he has a stubborn desire to serve. He has served as a trial attorney and a Christian fundamentalist preacher. In State House news, a prominent House member is changing her party. State Representative Mandy Landry, a New Orleans Democrat, is now registered as no party. Landry led the charge against the anti-abortion legislation in the 2022 session. The attorney says she is still gathering her thoughts about the decision to leave the Democrats and will speak on it a little later. Landry had recently lost a bid for a Senate seat against Royce Duplessis. The qualifying for his now vacant House seat opened this week. The special election will take place on February 18th for the New Orleans district. Also announced this week, State Representative Rick Edmonds is running for the District 6 Senate seat. The position is currently held by Senator Bodie White of Central. White will be term limited at the end of this year. White also chairs the Critical Money Committee, Senate Finance. That election will be this fall. Coming up, Governor John Bel Edwards celebrates the anniversary of his first act as governor back in 2016, Medicaid expansion. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is your local election headquarters.
All right, welcome back. Well, this week, Governor John Bel Edwards celebrated the anniversary of signing the Medicaid expansion in 2016 when he first took office. The expansion allows more than 750,000 people to have access to routine care, and it allows hospitals to be compensated for the care they are required to give. The program has been successful and has not had much pushback in recent years.
We have brothers and sisters here in Amite, Louisiana, and all across our state who are alive today who would not be alive had we not expanded Medicaid.
But it has been an incredible difference, you know, and the people are getting what they need now compared to what they were not getting before.
The governor says he will make sure it's hard for the next governor to overturn the expansion. In April, eligibility will be reevaluated for those currently enrolled. Louisiana lawmakers heard new recommendations on how schools can better tackle the mental health crisis in students. Capitol reporter Shannon Hecht brings us details on how it will translate into legislation.
After months of research, the task force presented their final recommendations for new legislation to help the state better address the youth mental health crisis. The final report included research into Louisiana's socioeconomic status, mental health trends, and input from students themselves. One of the suggestions that will require law changes is to allow for mental health to be an excusable absence. The task force also suggests having routine checks for mental health when students have physical screenings.
We're not looking to diagnose students with any like formal anxiety disorders or like depression or like anything like that. We're just looking to see if maybe there's some like underlying problem there as well, and then refer them to additional resources.
There's also a push to get more counseling and mental health services into schools. The hope is to better understand why students are acting out in the classroom and keep them from being suspended or expelled.
It affects every one of us in this room and in the state. And so I look forward to having a bipartisan package, working with some of my other colleagues.
Representative Marcel plans to bring legislation in the upcoming session to address the issues found by the task force. There is talks of continuing the task force into the future, and they will be returning to the legislature with those recommendations and looking for funding for future research. At the Capitol for your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
Lawmakers say the Department of Children and Family Services is making progress after several high-profile controversies. DCFS Secretary Terry Ricks says the agency has hired more than 180 employees in the past few months after the agency has been criticized for not having enough workers. Even though DCFS is showing progress, Ricks says the agency still has a long way to go.
Even if 100% of my vacancies were filled, we would still be short the number of personnel that we need in child welfare to meet the caseload standards.
In the meantime, the Secretary says they're also dealing with a shortage in foster parents. The committee also expressed concerns about reuniting children with parents when that may not be the best idea. Officials say they are working on community initiatives to tackle the issue. After a recent spike in crime across New Orleans, Mayor LaToya Cantrell is launching a new task force to help. The mayor says this task force will have a few goals, including that of preventing violent crime and removing the most violent offenders from the streets. As for how they will know if it's working, the mayor stated that there are 60 days targeted for getting feedback to the community on progress they're making. The task force will include the NOPD, the city's Office of Family Services, Health Department head, the parish DA, and Chief Judge Robin Pittman.
Much like we leaned on during COVID-19, so this will take on a shape kind of mirrored towards the task force that I stood up that really guided me in my decision making, but also resources that we now have to bear.
The task force will be led by Director Tyrell Morris, who currently heads the city's 911 system. Shreveport is also taking a closer look on how to handle crime after two recent shootings. City Council approved a measure to increase the number of security cameras in neighborhoods seeing higher crime. The council hopes with more cameras it can help police identify and catch potential suspects. This is one of the first moves by the council under the new mayor, Tom Arsenault. The city will be working with police to identify key areas to focus their attention on. Coming up, Jeremy Alford from LAPolitics.com knows everything there is to know about the governor's race and then some. Shannon Hecht sits down with him next. Stay with us.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Now that we're in the new year, the governor's race has really kicked off with some new announcements. I'm here with Jeremy Alford of LAPolitics.com. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here.
So I want to talk about what happened this week. There was a lot of announcements and non-announcements. So I want to start with Billy Nungesser. We thought he was going to be running for governor for weeks now, but a statement came out saying that he's going to be focusing on going for re-election. So can you tell me a little bit about how that all went down?
I love it. Everything that went down earlier this week didn't go down the way it was supposed to go down. And for a political reporter like for me and for like you, I love it, right? I mean, welcome to the 2023 election cycle. Billy Nungesser has decided not to run for governor. He's going to seek re-election instead. That was a bit of a surprise to me, but you know, I think he is taking the bid from Attorney General Jeff Landry that seriously. I think when you see someone like a U.S. Senator John Kennedy pass on this race, it's easier to understand why Billy Nungesser would pass on the race. So he's going to go back home, so to speak, and run for lieutenant governor, and that sets up all kind of other interesting dominoes because there were people lined up ready to run for lieutenant governor. Chief among them, Speaker Clay Shakespeare, who may be looking at parish president back in Ascension Parish instead.
Right, and you know, before the holidays, Billy seemed very gung-ho about this, that he made a lot of comments about how he didn't think Jeff was the right guy for this. But do you think really that the Kennedy decision, even though we thought that was going to be his go-ahead, really kind of changed his mind?
I mean, it's hard to say. Look, Billy Nungesser is going to be gung-ho about anything he does. I like to say he would attend the opening of an envelope, and that's just Billy. He's one of the hardest working men in Louisiana politics. So I don't know. I think he was really out there searching for reasons to run. He spent a lot of money on a poll at the end of last month, and I think he liked a lot of what he saw, but it just wasn't enough to give him the energy and the will to take on Jeff Landry and the rest of the field that's developing.
Then someone who did announce, obviously, is Treasurer John Schroeder, and his announcement didn't seem like it kind of came the way it was supposed to as well. It was this donor email and everything. What do you kind of know about that?
So, you know, originally John Schroeder had told reporters and really anyone who would listen to him that he would announce on Thursday of this week. But in John Schroeder fashion, and this is someone I've covered for many years, I've gotten to know personally, he's a guy who will kind of follow his gut and is not afraid to be impulsive, and that is what we saw this week is John Schroeder kind of shooting from the hip and making an unexpected announcement. And I think that may be a sign of things to come with the Schroeder campaign. Right,
and obviously Attorney General Jeff Landry has been in the race since October. He's that hardline conservative, but Schroeder is also really touted being a conservative himself. But what do you think really already kind of sets these two candidates apart?
Money. No one in this field is going to catch up with Jeff Landry in terms of fundraising. It's one of the most sophisticated operations I have ever seen in Louisiana. And if you go and you spend some time and you look through his campaign finance accounts and PACs, you're not going to see a prolific fundraiser in Louisiana. You're going to find someone who has a network across the nation with all kinds of different groups. And now he's got the endorsement of the Republican Party. That's another vessel through which he can raise money. And it looks like Jeff Landry is probably going to break all fundraising records for this election. And as I've done before, I think with you on the show, I'll predict that spending overall will shatter records too. I think we'll surpass $100 million spent on this race.
And we know that Schroeder is not the only Republican that is considering getting in the race. There's rumors of State Senator Sharon Hewitt, State Representative Richard Nelson, who are also Republicans. So, you know, especially these smaller guys, do you think that this big price tag that Jeff Landry has, may deter some others from throwing their hat in the ring for this one?
So right, I think we're going to hear announcements over the next week from Senator Sharon Hewitt and Representative Richard Nelson. And one more person we need to mention on the conservative side of things is Attorney Hunter Lundy. He's been in the field for a few months. He's raising money through the trial bar in Mississippi and Louisiana. He's also expected to maybe spend some of his own cash, and he's got it to spend. I think there are people who look at Jeff Landry and his assets in this race and they're scared off. And I think there are others who see an opportunity. I think that folks know that Jeff Landry is the kind of figure, is a Trump-like figure. If you look at the polling figures, there's not a whole lot of gray area. People either like Jeff Landry or they don't. And some folks see an opportunity there. And if we learned anything 8 years ago, is that the fundamentals of Louisiana politics do not apply in a governor's race. Who makes it to the runoff matters, and personality matters.
And let's talk about the Democratic side. There's been a lot of talk about Sean Wilson of DOTD. Katie Bernhardt had put out a poll with her on there with the head of the Dem Party. So what are we kind of seeing over there? Is there anyone who's maybe nearing an actual decision for the Democrats?
It's really messy, and you wouldn't assume that because you would think that the fight to become the heir apparent to John Bel Edwards would have been given a little bit more thought by now, but apparently it hasn't. You got Democratic Party Chair Katie Bernhardt. Her name is being polled in a survey that is paid for by New Orleans businessman A.P. Marullo. She is going to have something to say very soon. We'll have to wait and see what it is, but she's about as serious as you can get, and not everyone is happy about that in the Democratic Party because just her chairmanship exposes the natural divides in the party, the urban versus rural specifically. Then you have Transportation Secretary Sean Wilson, who has polled himself. He likes what he sees. He's still thinking about it. He's a real threat to any Democrat in this race because he could very well inherit what John Bel Edwards has built. Then we got a couple of wild cards. One is East Baton Rouge District Attorney Hillard Moore. I've spoken to Mr. Moore several times this year already. He is very serious about this race. He's going to decide within the next few weeks or so. He was looking at Attorney General, but now he's looking at Governor. Another district attorney from St. Charles, Joel Chasson. He has been included in the same poll as Katie Bernhardt. I'm told that if Katie Bernhardt should run, that District Attorney Chasson may be in her corner. So it seems like there's a little bit of overlap or in alliances there, but not nearly as clear or as well defined as what we're seeing on the conservative side.
Right, the word on the street has really been, after John Bel Edwards, it's going to be a Republican. So would you say that maybe that kind of talk around the political world here has made some Democrats hesitant? They know it's going to be an extremely steep battle if they do get in the race, especially against Jeff Landry?
I'll say that Attorney General Jeff Landry is the strongest candidate for governor I've seen in a January preceding the governor's race. But if we go back 8 years, we may have been sitting here probably saying that, well, John Bel Edwards, he doesn't have a whole lot of money, doesn't have any name recognition, probably going to lose. He was the long shot in that race. And so, I refuse to recognize fundamentals in a governor's race. It's just too intimate for people here. People vote for Congress and they vote for the U.S. Senate, and the person who wins, we get to ship them off to D.C. We don't have to look at them. But a governor is intimate. That governor is going to be in your child's classroom. That governor is going to be in your living room during hurricanes and natural disasters. So it's a little bit different. And you know, if the field develops the way it looks, I'm maybe expecting the unexpected. It may be, you know, kind of an interesting race.
Right, just like you said, it's only January. There's so much that can happen before qualifying in August, and so it's Louisiana, right? So would you say to those who maybe feel hopeless or whether their guy is not going to get in or they're very confident that Jeff's going to win, what would you kind of say, you know, that everyone feels like it's already wrapped up?
You make me laugh because we've been doing this for months, right?
Yeah.
And so for us, it's like the action's getting, but most people, we forget that, and hopefully that doesn't color our reporting too much. But, you know, I think you're right. I think let's all take a deep breath. I'll do it too. Don't worry too much about the polls right now. And I would say somewhere around Labor Day, you know, kind of start paying attention to the polls a little bit more, see who's up on TV. I think we're going to have more people early on TV, earlier than usual, but I still think that Labor Day, around that time of the year, is when you can really kind of start taking some of this stuff a little bit more seriously.
All right, Jeremy, well, I appreciate your insight as always.
Always good to be here.
And we'll be keeping a close eye on that governor's race all year long, so stick with us. We'll be right back.
This is your local election headquarters.
Welcome back. Looking ahead to the coming week, we expect to hear the official announcements from Senator Sharon Hewitt and Representative Richard Nelson's decision for the governor's race, as we mentioned before. Also on Thursday is the State Bond Commission. We will hear from candidate John Schroeder. On Wednesday at the Capitol, the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority will be going over the Coastal Master Plan with the public. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics. I'm Fred Childers. Stay informed, and I'll see you next Sunday right here on your local election headquarters.